But before we begin, I would like to say a few words. First of all, this guide is not intended to alter your gameplay at all. Remember that this is only a guide, and things like this should be used as a reference and not books that you will follow blindly. The purpose of this video is to help you in finishing all the missions in the hard mode star chart. Basically, this steel path guide that I have created is for the sole purpose of completing each missions at the fastest time possible solo. If somehow you have a different Warframe, weapon, or setup that you think is faster than what I have shown on this video, then feel free to share it on the comment box below. Okay, I think that's pretty clear and straightforward. Now let's begin the video. The first Warframe that is very useful in the new Steel Path mode is Wukong. Specifically, this frame can let you speedrun sabotage, capture, rescue, and spy missions in the hard mode difficulty. His Cloud Walker is very handy because not only does it gives you insane mobility, but it's very good in spy missions since lasers will not detect you while your second ability is active. In normal circumstances, I can usually finish the missions I've mentioned before in under 2 minutes with Wukong running a Cloud Walker build. I know invisibility frames exists, and a frame like Ivara would also be viable, but compared to Wukong, this frame is slower. Cloud Walker's speed is one of the best when it comes to speed running missions, and I guarantee that you'll finish it without breaking a sweat with this build. The build is basically a high duration and efficiency build, created to allow you to cast Cloud Walker anytime you want. The preparation mod is an optional mod, but I highly recommend it so you can just go to the objective once you are in the mission. There are some sabotage missions that requires you to defend a target for a couple of seconds, but don't worry, as this Wukong setup is also tough enough to withstand heavy damage. Remember that you can always rely on your clone and as well as the 1500 armor from your Defy for damage reduction. To top all of that, you have 3 survival techniques at your disposal that you can rely on once you have taken fatal damage. Take note that we are not doing any endless runs in here. Our main goal is to finish each mission at the fastest time possible, and the build that I have shown you for Wukong will suffice for the specific missions I have mentioned. The next Warframe that I highly recommend is Baruuk. Remember when I made a video predicting that this Warframe will murder everything in hard mode? Well, it turns out to be better. Honestly, I've never expected Baruuk to be this awesome in the new Steel Path mode. I was only expecting that he can be great in endless survival missions, but I was very wrong. This frame can literally do every mission that requires you to kill enemies. A reactive Stormbrook can be good in survival, exterminate, and even in defection missions. The thing about Steel Path is it doesn't only have increase level, but also an increase in enemy spawn, making it easy for Baruuk to erode his restraint bar and use his Desert Wind ability. What's even more exciting is that you can also use Baruuk in defense and mobile defense missions. I know that Mesa exists, and she is one of the fan-favorite frame when it comes to defense, but Steel Path poses a threat to Mesa, especially if you are doing the mission solo. Her damage reduction from Shatter Shield is not enough to mitigate damage solo in Steel Path. Baruuk is different, as not only he can destroy enemies but also crowd control them so they won't do fatal damage to the defense target. And yes, his survivability is better compared to Mesa in my honest opinion. For both exterminate and survival, I highly recommend the same mod setup I've shown you on my recent Baruuk video. But for missions that require you to defend something, I would suggest removing adaptation and replacing it with overextended. In defense, you will need a lot of range to both crowd control and help you erode Baruuk's restraint bar a lot faster. You can use this mod setup if you want in all missions, as survivability isn't a problem at all when you just want to finish all the missions in the hard mode star chart. Lastly, for the Desert Wind build, I'm currently running this mod setup. No need to change element if you are going up against specific faction, as this is more of a universal build. The reactive storm augment will copy the element type that an enemy is weak against, so it's not needed to change mod setup if your goal is to complete all the nodes in the new star chart. The next frame is the King of Excavation, Limbo. Jojo frame is still the best when it comes to excavation missions. The only thing that you need to do is give the exact amount of range to your cataclysm depending on the enemy you are facing. For enemies that have nullifiers, I suggest you go with minimal range and very high duration build, while a full range Limbo Wonderland would be epic against Grinier and infested factions. Another great Warframe to have is Nyx. which is specifically great in interception missions. Max range and efficiency build for this Warframe will allow you to spam her chaos ability, which then turns any interception mission a walk in the park. But Nyx is not only good in interception, but also a great Warframe when it comes to doing non-Corpus hijack missions. Just use the same high range build, but only this time, we will use the brief respirator mod so we can generate shields while we are spamming our chaos ability. If you are doing a Corpus, or a Norok in interception, I highly advise you to use Mitre with the neutralizing justice augment. This weapon will take care of those pesky nullifiers, and will definitely make the mission a lot easier. Also, be sure to use a weapon that can kill level 100 plus enemies easily. I can suggest a couple, but I'm usually running every mission with one of my favorite melee weapon, the Crone Prime. Just go with the usual viral build, which is good for almost all enemies in the game. For assassination missions though, I highly recommend that you focus on modding this melee weapon with the element that a boss is weak against. By the way, star chart bosses in the Steel Path are just the same. They have the same weakness and you can check it on your codex. The only difference is that they have more survivability compared to their low-level versions. Like I've said, there are a couple of melee weapons that are great in Steel Path, and you can check them out later in this channel. I have plenty of weapon builds in here which are mainly focused to take on high-level enemies. But Nyx is not only good in interception, but also a great Warframe when it comes to doing non-Corpus hijack missions. Just use the same high-range build, but only this time, we will use the brief respirator mod so we can generate shields while we are spamming our chaos ability. Speaking of boss fights, there are two Warframes that I recommend for doing such missions. One is Loki for his easy-to-use stealth, and the second frame is Inaros for his abundant health supply. Loki is best used in boss fights where bosses are easier to fight when they are not moving fast. Example of these fights are the Raptor fight in Europa, your first boss fight against Vahek in Earth, or your first Iliad V encounter in Jupiter. All of these boss fights will require less effort if you are using a stealth Warframe. Now I know that there are many stealth frames, but I find Loki the best because his invisibility is reliable and easy to use. The only thing you need to do is equip the right weapon and mod setup so you can kill them as quickly as possible. Like I've said, boss fights are just the same. They just have more health and shields. The same aspect applies to Inaros. You just need a good weapon, and just mod your Sand King with the usual all survivability mods. This frame is especially helpful in boss fights that require you to face tank enemies. Stealth doesn't work on other star chart bosses, and you usually need to survive all the damage that they are throwing. This makes Inaros better in these types of boss fights. Just take for example their hard mode Sentient Chicken fight. Now, this fight is brutal if you don't take it seriously. A piece of advice: treat this fight as an Eidolon fight now. Use the best amp, or more specifically, the meta amp that you are using in Eidolon hunts for this fight. Also, use the Medurai focus to take down the shield of this Sentient Chicken faster. If you don't know yet what is the best amp in the game, then I highly suggest you watch my King of All Amps video, which I will leave the link at the end of this guide. By the way, aside from boss fights, high health Inaros is very useful in Corpus hijack missions. You just go to the objective, ride the Corpus car, and dance until you get to your final destination. Now there are a couple of nodes that I haven't finished yet, and I'm certainly excited about the arena missions in Sedna, and as well as the index missions on Neptune. For these missions, I think your best bet in completing them as fast as possible is using a stealth frame and a strong melee weapon. An example would be the Loki build I've shown you earlier. A high duration with rolling guard mod build would suffice to get those index and arena missions done quickly. And lastly, for the Archwing missions, the best Archwing in my opinion for all missions is the Amishore. The full defensive capability of this Archwing will let you finish all types of missions quickly without dying. I don't have a very high-end build for my Amishore yet, but this build is enough for all Archwing missions. For the Archweapon, I also don't have a specific suggestion, just use anything that is modded better. The good thing about Amishore is it has everything you need to survive, that you only need a good weapon to kill enemies fast. It's not the same as the normal star chart missions, as enemy levels are lower and they can be killed with one shot while using a fully modded archgun. Take note that this is not the only Steel Path video I have in store for you lads. I'm planning to release more helpful guides and other entertaining Steel Path videos. I just released this first to help you out complete those Steel Path star chart missions quickly and easily. I hope that this guide will serve you well. Please give a like and subscribe if you want to watch more content from us. Thank you so much for watching. Squad Leader signing off.